Welcome, everyone, to Dr. Michelle's Wild Warrior podcast. I'm excited to speak with you today about some things that are coming down the pike nationwide, really globally, in many circumstances, and certainly in our lovely state of Oregon. And what I want to talk about today is, a broad subject of things, but related to medical mandates. It was announced last week by our governor, Kate Brown, that all healthcare workers in the state of Oregon and all school faculty and teachers and staff must receive the Rona injection that was recently approved as of yesterday for at least one brand, one company. And I think that for the moment, we should put aside our potential differences on how we feel about these injections and recognize that this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't a pro or anti issue. This isn't race or gender or socioeconomic status. It could be applied to that, but it is a human rights issue, really, truly. And all of us should be, in my opinion, putting aside those differences that have been really, made so clear this year and have been heightened and intentionally so, in my opinion, to kind of pit us against one another and put those differences aside and recognize how impactful this type of mandate is on everybody's life especially in our country. And it's extremely concerning to me for many, many reasons, whether you've chosen to, take this injection for yourself or not, shouldn't honestly matter. I think it's really, really important that we understand what's happening here and that we are losing our ability to make decisions based on our best interest for our own health. And health is a very individualized thing. And I think a big theme that we've experienced and heard and has been kind of pounded into us as mantra this year has been for the greater good. I do these things for you. I wear this mask, or I take this medicine for you, or to protect the elders in my life, or to protect my patients, or to protect, a vulnerable person in my life. And while those are noble sounding and altruistic sounding, the reality of the situation is that those things are actually not true. And especially when it comes to this injection. And unfortunately, we've come into this place of shame and blame and accusations and name calling and coercion, bribery, in fact, and now, attempts at legal, a law essentially that, puts some of us in a position where we certainly have our backs against the wall. Medical choices should always be individualized, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean that we don't consider the general population in our community at all. I really have found that in practicing naturopathic medicine for this many years, if I don't tend to the individual's needs, then the success of their attempts at optimizing their health are going to be much less attainable. And what I mean by that is, we all come from a unique circumstance. We all come from a unique story. We all have unique health history that is relevant to every decision we make about our health moving forward. And to ignore or negate those or to somehow minimize those is, in my opinion, an egregious act against the person's individual health needs. So I'll use myself as an example, and I have spoken about this a little bit on social media, but, I have an individual health history that makes it very concerning for me to consider taking this injection. And I generally don't tell people my health history, certainly not my patients. In fact, it's my policy to, in general, keep that information to myself, especially around decisions like this, because I feel like I want people to make the right decision for themselves, not based on what I did or what I've done with my family or what other patients of mine have done. Because again, it's an individual choice and should always remain such. So for me, with a platelet clotting issue that I had in my past, and I've also had Bell's palsy, although that might be considered so minor, it impacted and still impacts my life and has for 20 plus years. So it's not something to be belittled in any way, shape, or form. But the other condition that I had also, makes these injections very, very concerning for me, and could potentially trigger a clotting disorder in me and make it so that I'm not here functioning at my optimal health for my family and my community and myself. And so here I face, and I'll be honest, I would not choose this. It would be very unlikely that I would choose this product for myself, regardless of my health history at this point, because it's my personal belief that I haven't seen enough data. It's not long enough. Most FDA approvals take 10 to 12 years. We know that this was fast-tracked. And I haven't been able to see clear data that shows me that it is beneficial for others if I take it. And for my personal, health, if it were to mitigate symptoms, I believe that I have done many of the other things to mitigate symptoms if I were to contract this illness. So I'm not going to live in a state of fear and choose a product for myself that I don't feel has been vetted long enough. Personally, I believe that in order to mitigate symptoms, for something that I'm not terribly concerned about for me. And that's my personal decision and should always remain that. So, talking about health history, that's a really important thing. And so now, using myself as an example, and this applies, to many, many other people that I know, now my governor is making it basically so that I may not be able to practice my profession anymore. And I have, those of us who have trained and practiced medicine for many, many years have put in sweat, blood, and tears and time and a ton of money and our passion into our professions and into our patients. And now we're at the brink of perhaps not being able to do that anymore, or having our license taken away, or our practices taken away, or being fined $500 a day for not complying with a government mandate. So basically, my personal health, my individual and historical needs for my personal health, my advice from medical providers are essentially negated by a politician. And that, in my opinion, is a very, very dark and slippery slope that all of us should be concerned about. Again, whether you believe in this medication or not, whether you've taken it or not, that's absolutely up to you. I hope you spent time researching it and made a decision that was right for you. And I commend you on whatever decision that is, because that's, again, your personal choice. And, I think that if we start conceding to this kind of behavior and these kinds of mandates, then we will find ourselves in the next 5 or 10 years being told all kinds of things that we have to do, and they may not be in our best interest. In fact, a lot of times they're not. And so, this is a gateway into something else that is extremely concerning and should be for everybody. Everybody. We hear the word freedom thrown around. It has somehow become this tainted word of, people envision, big trucks with flags flying behind them. And, I don't know. It's become so politicized to even talk about freedom anymore. And I think that is a real unfortunate situation, because our freedom is everything. We come into this world as a sovereign being, and free will and choice is one of the things that frankly makes us human. And it denotes the fact that we live in a country where we have choices available to us. And I hear people say, well, for the greater good, your individual freedoms should be set aside. And as I've researched this over the year ad nauseum, way more than I would like, and I always say I'm not trying to say that I am correct or right about everything. In fact, I would love to be proved completely wrong about some of the things that I've been seeing. That would be wonderful, because then things would be in a much better situation. But I have been researching a lot, as have many of my colleagues and many people I trust. And this whole idea of, ending the pandemic based on individuals doing their part by taking this injection or these injections is not actually true. So this product does not provide sterilizing immunity. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing breakthrough cases. And frankly, it was never designed that way. When we were all, those of us who believe some of the things that I believe, when we were first looking at the trial data, which has been less than transparent for sure, especially with this FDA approval, when we were first looking at the trial data, what was studied and what was touted as the efficacy of all three of the products that are, authorized and or approved here in the US was mitigating symptoms. So that's a valuable thing. I do not undermine that by any means. And for certain people, that decision to mitigate symptoms and potentially keep them from being hospitalized or having, suffering dire consequences to this very real illness that is going around, that might be the perfect decision for them. And they can weigh that based on, potential adverse side effects and what their risk factors are individually, whether that's age or obesity or diabetes or hypertension or heart disease or whatever. So that's fair enough. And the efficacy on that has been waning. We've been watching it wane over the last several months, now that we've kind of got this pool of data over, 8 months or so since the injection was authorized to be used in the United States. So, but it was never designed or studied to know if it stops transmission or infection, for that matter. And Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, just recently came out and said, yes, in fact, people who have been, fully injected are still transmitting the virus, and that actually their viral load in their nasopharynx is comparable to anybody who has not been fully injected. And remember, the definitions of that are important, because we hear a lot about, hospitalization, it's all fully uninjected people. Well, what, fully injected, I'm using clever language here to keep me from being censored, but fully injected means 2 weeks post second jab, if it, depending on the product, or 2 weeks post the single jab for the one company that has made that one. And that can be like up to a 6-week process. And so anybody who falls into that category of only having had one for the two jab products, doesn't qualify as having taken it. And so the data is a little bit skewed on that. And I wish that was something we could see more clearly. I think some states are actually collecting that data and showing us, that maybe somebody's had one or isn't fully yet, but they've had some. So that's important information that we should know, because we can make educated decisions out of that information. Data are very important for us to know and for it to be transparent for us to, for different scientists to look at this and understand what's going on. So again, back to Rochelle Walensky, she said that, this isn't stopping transmission, which means it's a non-sterilizing jab. And it provides non-sterilizing immunity. And this lends itself to viral immune escape, which many people have been warning about and have been dismissed, or people have attempted to discredit them, or that information's been censored. And I think it's important information. It's very important information. We need to understand, because remember, people are going about their lives thinking that they're doing the right thing for vulnerable people in their lives. And that's not true, sadly. I wish it were, believe me. But, for somebody, I just talked to somebody the other day who said, they took it on behalf of their parents, because their parents are older and more vulnerable. Well, that's, they can very much still transmit. And in fact, we may even be seeing asymptomatic transmission. My guess is yes, because if it does mitigate symptoms, then people are less likely to even know that they're ill. And so they could be shedding virus and potentially getting people sick without having the symptoms to tell their body, like, hey, maybe you should stay home and take care of yourself. So this is concerning. This is really concerning. And we're seeing an uptick in a lot of cases and hospitalizations in countries that have a very high, jab percentage rate of uptake, and in some states that are as well. And yes, we're seeing high cases and hospitalizations in states that have a lower percentage. That is definitely true. I think that, I'm not saying let her rip, but this virus is going to do its thing. We have to remember that nature is wise and also not always nice, unfortunately. And I also think when we as humans try and override or mess with nature, as was likely done with this, original coronavirus, with some of the gain of function things we're hearing about and seeing in the evidence, this is concerning. This is really concerning. And we need to remember that when we're pitting ourselves against each other as a granny killer or negligent or reckless, I've heard worse. I've heard people threatening or, wishing other people harm or death if they get exposed to the virus, if they've chosen not to take the injection. And gosh, people, that is the most devastating thing I could ever hear. Remember, in the beginning, we were all in this together, and we still are. We're not getting off this planet without each other. And we're not staying on it without each other either. Like, we're all here for a reason. And we are here to share our gifts with the world and to be compassionate, hopefully, and loving to the people in our lives, to connect, to be creative, to experience all the beautiful things that we have in life, and to do so with compassion and love for other human beings and reverence. I love that term because I think that's something we've really lost. So if we can look upon each other with this understanding that we each have our own story, we each have our own history. If you're in the aisle at the grocery store and somebody's having a bad day, you don't know that they didn't just, lose a loved one or suffer some trauma, or even that they just slept terribly. And to assume otherwise is not our right. I would hope we would approach them with compassion and understanding, because we've all been there. Those are all human experiences we can relate with. So what I'm trying to speak to on this is medical mandates of any product are the gateway to loss of our autonomy and our sovereign ability to make decisions for our own individual health and that of our children. And one of the things that is very distressing for me is watching how many people that I love in this state and in my town who are feeling the pressure to leave and to go somewhere else where this isn't a threat to their career and their livelihood and potentially their health. That's really sad to me. And I have felt that urge sometimes too. Like, I was just in Montana and Idaho with my daughter, and it was great and fun and lovely. And I could see, some of those towns being a great place to live. But the rebel in me wants to stand strong because I love it here. I've made a career for myself. I have connections. I have the mountains. I have the trails I love, and a home that I am blessed to have, and people in my community and my tribe that I trust and care about and want to be around and want to raise my children with. And I don't want to be driven from a place that I chose to call home, really 20 some years ago originally. And I am here at this time in my life. I feel like my purpose is to speak up and to speak out, even if it's against the grain, and even if it causes ripples, and even if it causes dissent from other people. I'm okay with that. And again, is it my truth? Yes. Is it the truth? I don't know. Please prove me wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. I have no vested interest. This doesn't help my career, believe me. In fact, I'm sure I've lost a few people because of my speaking out. I'm sure I've turned some people against me, and I don't say that as a victim. That's my choice. I've chosen to speak adamantly and passionately about the things I believe, and I'm sure it's damaged some relationships, but I cannot suppress who I am, what I believe in, what my philosophy of medicine is, based on what I might lose. That's not who I am. That would be stifling my own individual truth. Does that mean that I judge other people for their decisions? No, I want everybody to make a decision that's right for them individually. They have every right to choose that. And in some situations, it's a very good decision, and I support that fully. And if, there's fallout, then I will support that fully as well and help people, be as healthy as they can be, because that's generally what I want to try and do. So, let's see. I just want to make sure I'm covering all these things that I jotted down here. So, back to the individual health piece. It is not selfish to take care of your own health. In fact, it's extremely empowering. And that's a lot of what I spend my time doing with my patients. I kind of joke with them that I'm not coming home with them. I can't oversee what they're doing on a daily basis, nor should I. Like, they should have their right to live their life the way they want to and make the choices out of what we discuss the way that's fits them and suits their life. But I definitely try and educate my patients as much as I can about the options that they have. Informed consent is one terminology for that. And to give them the various risk-benefit ratios of things they can choose to do. And also just to like straight up empower them. I have patients that have limitations in their life, whether it's social or financial or, a history of trauma that kind of clouds some of the things they can do for themselves. I have patients with obviously past medical history that makes them need certain things in a certain way. And so my job is not to give them a one size fits all kind of treatment plan. My job is to get creative and help them figure out ways to make these things work best in their life. Perhaps they have a spouse that doesn't agree with their choices for organic food, and their spouse is the breadwinner, so they really are limited on how they can do that. So we have to get creative. We figure out ways, maybe there's a compromise by going to the farmer's market or something like that. These are ways to get creative with your own individual health. And I also say to my patients often, and many other people use this analogy, when you're on the airplane, if the oxygen drops, you put the mask on yourself before helping others. That's never been considered selfish, has it? I mean, if you pass out from lack of oxygen, then you're no good to the rest of the people. Same thing with emergency medicine. When I was a wilderness first responder and an EMT, our biggest thing was scene safety. Before you even step in to the scene to help other people, scene safety, which means looking out for yourself, because you have to. There's no good if you step into a scene and there's an electrocution issue and you are, now a victim also. What good are we if we are, if our own autonomous individual health is declining and we are no good to our family because we can't provide anymore, or, we can't, we need a ton of help. I'm not saying that isn't a real possibility. Of course, people need help in their health. We all suffer. But if we make individual choices that help optimize our own health, that is definitely not a selfish decision, okay? That's important to remember. It is actually, in my opinion, it is somewhat our obligation to take care of our individual health, because we are better for everybody else if we are taking care of our individual health in this situation and all others. So we know, after more than 18 months of data and research and, evidence and anecdotal information, we know that the risk factors for this condition, this illness, are very stratified. And unfortunately, the mainstream media and some of the other narratives that are pushed are based on an equal risk assessment for every single individual, kids, healthy young adults, etc. And that is frankly a lie. We know that this risk is very, very stratified. So your age is probably one of the most important things to take into account, and your underlying health. So if you are obese, if you have diabetes, if you have hypertension or heart disease or clotting disorders, all of those put you at much higher risk for fallout from this illness. And so that is something to factor in when you're making a decision for yourself. So imagine this, we've seen billions of dollars, some of it our own money, utilized for Big Pharma to promote these products. And I'm not saying that there's not value in certain situations. There is, and there are certain situations where there is value for these products. And I definitely, like I said, I support people's personal decision for what they choose to do. But imagine for a minute if we had put all those billions of dollars used for the advertising and the education and the messaging on these products. What if we had started with that 18 months ago, or more than a year and a half ago, and created home exercise programs for people when they were in stay-at-home situations, had done nutritional education platforms for people, had offered ways for people to access healthy foods rather than just the essential businesses, which were fast food joints. What if there had been apps that were free to download for people to calculate how much nutrition they needed in a day, and to educate them on how to get up and move properly, how to lift weights at home, how to do things safely, how to change their health? What if That's a huge amount of money that could have been used to change the course of this pandemic dramatically, and ultimately to change the health of our nation, which needs some mitigation, sadly, as it is. You know, these are things that are available to us. These are things that in the public health eye are completely ignored and blatantly censored. I have not heard any of the public health quote officials, aside from Fauci getting his little like blurb on vitamin D kind of off the cuff, you know, caught on camera. Otherwise, I've heard very little, if not nothing, from public health quote officials about actual health. We've heard about 2 mitigating factors: the injection and masks. That's it. And social distancing. Stay away from each other. So stay away from each other, cover your face, and take an injection. Those are the 3, options that we have available to us. It's not true. There's so much more. In fact, there's way more effective ways. I mean, we know ventilation is a really important factor in this. We know underlying health is one of the most important factors in the stratified risk assessment. So why aren't we addressing that? I don't understand it. And instead, those of us who are proactive with our health, and I'm not trying to be righteous on this. This is my career, so I've chosen to be, and I'm always a work in progress. Believe me, I'm not at my perfect health ever. I'm always trying to work toward it, and I make mistakes, and I, moderate, because I like a balance in life too, and I like to experience pleasure and do things that aren't always the best for me. That's okay. And you know what? Forgiveness for that and allowing ourselves to be human is a really important part of healing and health. Our mental, emotional, degradation of ourselves is damaging. And so to allow and accept ourselves to be human and to navigate things the best we can in the moment is okay. And that's part of being healthy too. But to demand that I take a product that is, 1, contraindicated for me in multiple levels, and 2, something I am very vehemently against putting in my body, me personally, and 3 is, still under trials that have, the trials are kind of no good anymore, really, because most of the placebos, the people who received the placebo have now received the injection. So we really don't have a control group except for those of us who are, not taking it. And we're not technically part of the trial. So, that's going to be skewed data for sure. So I'm being told that I can't practice naturopathic medicine or acupuncture in a state where I've worked my tail off to be licensed and to follow all the rules, in a time when my patients need me more than ever, and my family needs me to provide more than ever. And now I'm being told that if I don't take this injection against my will, then I will lose everything I've worked for in my life. So, there's thousands of us in this position. There's groups forming, and I have been amazed at how many people agree. And there's people who are fully jabbed that agree. Because again, this is a human rights issue, I remember studying the Tuskegee experiments back when I was an environmental scientist, actually, and then again when I was in naturopathic school. We cannot assume that our health and our best interest is not somehow clouded by the financial gains and the power that is at stake for those in charge. And I know that sounds whatever, conspiratorial or whatever, but public health has not been about health for many, many, many decades, sadly. Otherwise, things like glyphosate would not be in our food, or Cheetos wouldn't be FDA approved, or whatever other product you want to say. Do you want to eat those? That's fine. That's your individual choice. You're an adult. Again, it should be about choice. You get to make the choices for yourself that feel right and that serve you in whatever fashion that is. And I honor that and I respect that. So I urge you to consider this as something way bigger than just individual freedom. You know, it is literally the gateway to losing so many rights that we inherently should have. You know, that's what our country is founded on. And I know people get upset about that because of our history. There's so much controversy in all of it. And but I have been able to choose the profession that I love based on those freedoms. And many of you could probably, if you take an honest look, say the same for yourself. You know, you get to drive and travel wherever you want. You get to marry who you choose if you want to get married. You get to go to whatever restaurant or bar you want to go to. You get to exercise when and where you want. You get to be outdoors in nature when and where you want. You get to shop at a, Whole Foods kind of place, or Safeway, or wherever you want to shop. You get to live your life as you, as an adult, see fit. That should always be the case. I am not killing elders by living my life the way I see fit. And nobody should be made to feel that way. It's not reckless to take care of your individual freedom and your individual health. In fact, it's obligatory, in my opinion. And the only way we're going to change our future, the health of this planet, the health of our communities, the health of our food supply and our children and our future generations, is if we band together and say no. No means no, I do not comply, whether you've taken it or not. If we stand up together and unite and say no to mandates, we will change the world together as human beings. So, on that note, I love you all. I send out my best to every single one of you. I support you all in your own decisions. I respect the position that you may have. I value disagreement. I've had very, very respectful conversations with many people who I care about who disagree vehemently with what I have to say, and I'm cool with it. As long as you're respectful, and I will do the same. We have a right to our opinions. We have a right to make an educated decision for ourselves. We have a right to live our lives the way we see fit, as long as we are not causing harm in other people's lives, which we are not. If we choose not to take this injection, we are not causing any different harm than somebody who does, because it does not stop transmission. It is non-sterilizing immunity. So if you choose it to mitigate symptoms because you're concerned about the fallout, great. That's perfectly okay and understandable. And I commend you on your decision. If you choose not to because you're concerned about your own personal health, you don't feel like you've seen enough data, you feel like it's a principle or a religious thing that you don't agree with, good. You have that right. You get to make that choice for yourself. So, safety is always a nuanced thing. There's risks in everything we do. I'm risking my life right now just sitting on the second floor of my house. I'm trusting in the builders that put my house together 6 years ago or 7 years ago. There's inherent risk in everything we do. We are mortal beings. We have somehow become distant from our mortality or the acceptance of such. Death is sad. It's terrible for those left behind. I have lost people in my own life. I've sat by bedsides and watched people pass. I have not a callous bone in my body about this stuff. I'm saddened that people are dying alone. That should never, ever, ever happen. I'm saddened that people are dying in isolation. I'm saddened that people are suffering in this world. It's terrible. And I have compassion for everybody who's lost somebody due to this illness, due to this product. You know, people who've lost their livelihoods or their careers or their homes, or their home state because they're having to choose to flee. I'm saddened for all of it. And I think we should all take a little bit broader look and see the ripple effects that happen to our communities when we are divided. And remember that we can choose to see each other with respect, with objectivity, and understand that we all have a right to our own decisions and our own opinions, and to value that. You know, when I first went to college, I loved the fact that we had these, heartfelt and kind of heated discussions among us all. We were all these different characters from all over the state and the South. I mean, 37,000 of us as 18-year-olds put together in a collective to just figure each other out. And it was amazing. I loved that. I loved hearing different stories. I loved seeing where people had come from. It expanded my mind and opened me up to seeing that the human experience is broad. It's so diverse and it's so unique. And we should be celebrating that about each other. We should honor and celebrate that about each other. It's the only way forward. So thanks for your time today. Please, if you have questions or comments, as long as they're respectful, keep them clean, people. I respect and honor your opinions and the place you're coming from. And I hope that we can recognize that, regulations about this kind of choice, what should be an individual choice, are very much a problem for all of us, and we should all be considering that and really taking a deeper look and setting aside our political beliefs and our religious beliefs for a moment, and our individual beliefs about society and this illness, and really taking a hard look at what is the answer. And it's a multifaceted kind of answer, and I don't think taking away people's individual rights to choose what goes in their body is anything that's sustainable. So I wish you all the best. Get out there and enjoy your day. Do something creative. Do not live in fear. Please remember, love overrides fear. And so much of this whole 2 years almost has been driven by fear and continues to be so. So take a deep breath. Recognize that you're okay in this moment. All we have is the present. Let's not get stuck in our anxiety about the future or lament about our past. Just be here and now and do the things that can best serve you and your family and your community. And forgive yourselves for mistakes, and forgive each other for being human. So much love to all of you, and I will look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you so much for joining me today.